autumn يعني فصل الخريف.
أقول لازم تكون فصل من الفصول.
Um, okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's lovely to have you all. And thanks, Deborah and Rosalie, for um, joining us and dedicating the time to talk to our students on this very important topic. Um, uh, I remember whenever we asked our students to engage with academic texts, there were always issues of how can I approach the text? Do I have to know all the vocabulary I come across in the text? Do I have to memorize the vocab? And I find it tricky because there is some kind of specific way or let's say jargon of writing academic texts. So today is really this is a very important session that will talk about how to approach reading texts, academic text and writing. Also, note taken, very important skills for postgrads and undergrads. So today we are honored to have Dr. Deborah Nixon and Associate Professor Rosalie Goldsmith, both from the University of Technology, Sydney in Australia. Thank you so much for joining us, Rosalie and Deborah. And I know it's a bit late in the time now over there, but you have been enthusiastic about this session, and you've been really proactive about talking to our students, dedicating time, dedicating your expertise and sharing your expertise with our students. So we really appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing from you. Deborah and Rosalie, over to you.
Okay, well, just by way of a quick introduction, I am Deborah Nixon, and I work with embedding critical discipline-specific language in the law faculty. So I mostly work with law students with very dense text. So it's really important for students in law to be able to find a way into reading text. And a lot of new students are unfamiliar with the way texts are organized. So I guide them through that, if you like, right from the beginning. So that's what I do as an applied linguist. Rosalie?
Oops. Yeah.
She's trigger happy.
It's working without my mouse, so I'm on the touchpad and it's touchy, shall we say. Thanks, Deb. Deborah and I work together with the Academic Language and Learning team at the University of Technology, Sydney, and each of us in the team is responsible for one or two faculties whom we support with the development of disciplinary literacies. And in my case, I work mainly with the Faculty of Engineering and IT, but also with the Faculty of Science. And again, it's that idea of trying to develop disciplinary literacies throughout the engineering curriculum, undergraduate, postgraduate, and higher degree research students. And I also work with staff members, and with engineering and IT in particular, there's a dislike of writing and an even stronger dislike of reading, mainly with the students, occasionally with the staff, and so there are different strategies that I need to deploy to try and encourage people to support the ideas that they're coming up with evidence, and also to read more widely and to investigate some of the more interesting ideas that they come across. So that's me. So shall we kick off? And hello, and welcome to all of the students, and thank you for coming along. And oh yeah, can we just say, if you've got any questions, please post them in chat, and we'll try and answer them as we go. So don't keep all the questions to the end. Just we're really happy to engage in discussion as we go. And so particularly if you want to, if anything comes up, just post it in chat. And there'll also be opportunities throughout our presentation for you to have some discussion time as well. Okay, so so this is what we'll cover, or what we'll hope to cover. Just the idea of looking at those, what are the core reading skills, and thinking about how you develop them. and looking at improving your motivation when you're dealing with some really challenging texts or some long texts. We also look at that wicked problem of artificial intelligence that keeps bobbing up everywhere, but particularly in higher education. And for us in particular, the development of those critical skills, because we see that in relationship in particular to AI as really important, and one of the reasons that people come to university, and what we hope people will leave university with is those critical skills, and then just looking at some strategies of how to read those longer and more difficult texts, and how to manage the volume of readings that you come across in your studies. Okay, so start off with there is that issue that reading has a bad reputation, and thinking about how many of you complete all of your readings and what motivates you to do them. And Deborah and I have discussed this in our own experience as undergraduates and postgraduates and high degree research students. And of course, the more motivated you are, the keener you are to do them. But certainly as an undergraduate, I would only ever do the readings if I knew I was going to be put on the spot, which I quite often was. And so it was fear of exposure that motivated me. So just thinking about that, just thinking about how you approach your readings, and what are the things that really motivate you to actually get through your readings. And then there's all those comments about, sort of, it's twice as hard to get through your readings as it is to do the other homework that you are assigned. So thinking about your approaches to reading, just as we're going through this, just think about how do you approach any kind of a text that you're assigned, whether it's a chapter in a textbook or an article, or so even an online post or something like that. What do you do? So do you try and sort of work out why are you doing it? What do you expect to get from it? Do you read the whole of the first page carefully and look up every word that you don't understand? Do you go through the text and highlight so the key moments? Do you do the strategy of reading either the executive summary or the abstract or the introduction and conclusion first? Do you set yourself a time limit for detailed reading, or for what we call close reading, where you're just sort of reading one part of the text really carefully? Do you take notes while reading? If so, how? You might do a combination of those, and you might do something else altogether. So just sort of make a note, and you might want to again comment in text in chat about what you do, or what are the things that you find effective or motivating, or what are the things that really slow you down and cause you puzzlement. Now, Deb, do you mind, because my screen is entirely slides, so I can't see anything else. So if there are things popping up in chat, can you just let me know, or if you can sort of...
I actually can't see the chat.
Okay.
I can monitor the chat if you like. I can
okay.
monitor and
Thank
let
you.
No worries.
Thank you, Ahmed. Yeah,
I can see. I opened up a chat window, but there's nothing for the webinar, but there's nothing in there yet. So
nothing yet. Yeah.
No,
okay, that's okay.
I'll be able to see on the bottom.
Okay, great. Super. So yeah, so if anything sort of looks urgent, Ahmed, if you could just let us know, and we can pause and sort of have a discussion.
Sure.
Okay. So just thinking about I can see. I can see now. Excellent. It's my ribbon's just bobbed up again. Okay. So what we've listed here are what we see to be some of the core reading skills, no matter what your discipline is. And this is not something, skill is probably not quite the right word, because I would call it more of a practice, because a skill is something you master, but a practice is something you keep on doing and you get better at, or you develop more depth in a practice as you go. And I see reading as a practice that we do all of the time. And if we stop doing it, then we really lose some of our really important understanding. So we've got that idea of critical reading, where you need to sort of come in and sort of say, okay, well, who's writing this? Who's saying this? And can I trust them? And is it the absolute truth, or should I check their evidence for, or check what they're saying and find a comparison? So that idea that you don't accept at face value what an author is saying. And that's something, that's a real practice that you develop throughout your studies. And the more you know about a field, the more critical you can become in your reading. And that next skill, skimming and scanning, of course, that's where you're sort of getting a really quick overview or an understanding of a text. And quite often you might use that to decide whether you need to read that text or not, or how carefully you need to read it. So you might skim it and say, oh yeah, I don't have to read this in depth, but maybe the next article I do need to read in depth. Note-taking while reading. I have to say that if I don't take notes while I read a scholarly article, then it's almost a waste of time, because I can't remember by the end what the beginning was about, and I certainly can't remember the key points. But if I'm taking notes while I'm reading, a lot of that information gets retained. So for me, that's a really important thing that I need to do. Another area of core reading is identifying the structure, sort of understanding how an academic text is organized. And generally, certainly in the sciences, they've got a fairly standard structure. In the social sciences, they tend to vary their structure a little bit. But Deb, of course, can sort of talk to the structure in law articles as well, and sort of say that, you know, what's expected there. But you sort of know generally what to expect, and once you know how a text is structured, then you know the bits that you need to pay attention to. If you're looking at specifics, you might want to be looking at someone's methods, or you might just really want to focus on what they say in the discussion, rather than an analysis of their results. Depending on what you're looking for, you tend to focus on one or another aspect of the article. And then one of the reasons that we do all of this earlier stuff is to synthesize the information, to build a coherent argument, and to build our own understanding of what we're learning from these different readings and from these different experts, and from their different perspectives. And then that critical element of evaluating the sources, being able to judge the reliability, the relevance, and any kind of bias. And that, of course, is really important. Journal articles certainly, but online materials even more. You have to be very circumspect about how reliable a source is, and how trustworthy it can be. So can we just ask you to think about your own experiences and your experiences of being in classes with others. What are some of the reasons that students don't do the readings or the pre-work? We've got some suggestions on the screen, but you may well have some others. So can you just sort of take, say, 2 or 3 minutes to pop some ideas in the chat, and then we can have a look at what ideas you come up with.
Very honest, too late.
Or all of the above. Yeah. And I guess probably while we're on this topic, do people get frustrated in class when other students haven't done the readings and you have? So how does that feel for you?
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, that thing about misunderstanding the points is an interesting one, because we all know that some readings can be just super intimidating. And you know, if you actually don't know where to start, if you sort of don't understand a lot of the language or a lot of the terminology, then that can be a really uncomfortable experience. Okay. Okay. So we might go back to the slides, and I'll just see if I can. So I'm just having okay, slide control. Okay,
Close
so we've got, sorry.
Did you want to close the chat, or are you having a problem with the slides?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
I'm okay here. Yeah. Okay, so we've got some ideas there, and we're thinking about oops. The next thing that sort of is coming up that is confronting all of us in our reading and in our writing, and I'm talking, you know, sort of in my experiences in academia as well as teaching students, is the AI trap, and we're finding that generative AI is more and more prevalent, and it promises a lot, but it doesn't always deliver. And so what we're seeing, particularly at the moment, is a misapprehension by a lot of people about what AI actually is doing. So the generative AI tools are large language models. They're not large knowledge models. So what they do is, you know, as we know, they just sort of scrape information from everywhere, but they don't evaluate it. They have no idea whether it's true or false. It's just, and it's all presented as equal. Okay, so equal in value. So they mimic knowledge, but they don't generate knowledge. However, they do look very impressive, and a lot of the time they sound incredibly convincing. You know, this is it. This is the truth, and therefore, particularly for less confident students, AI can be quite a difficult area to navigate, because you don't know what to trust and not to trust. What we're seeing at the moment is that the more confident and adept students know how to use AI as a guide rather than as a trusted source, those more confident students know to check the facts, but the less confident students think that the way that AI is presenting itself is okay. Well, that must be the truth. And therefore they fall into the trap of presenting information that's inaccurate. And this is just some information about AI. I won't go into to depth, but it's it does have limited contextual understanding. There's a lot of potential for misinformation. There's also a lack of critical thinking and analysis. Also that there's a major problem with bias in any of the large language models. The ChatGPT is the most common one used, but they all tend to rely on information where the information that's been provided hasn't been checked for bias itself. So it might all come from a particular, say, sort of a very Western perspective and not take in other points of view, or it might take in one political perspective and not others. So we all suggest that any large language model be used as a supplementary tool. It can be very handy, but I wouldn't rely on it implicitly. Okay. So thinking about what we've just been looking at in terms of core reading skills and challenges in getting motivated, etc. Can you just please post in chat? You don't have to answer all of these questions, just maybe choose one question and say, perhaps, how do you motivate yourself to do your readings? Or how do you develop critical reading skills? How do you make reading a purposeful activity? Or what are the strategies that you use to do the readings? Okay, so I will give people a few minutes. And post in chat. Okay, so while you're posting those, I'll just move on to the next slide, which is just thinking about developing critical reading skills. And these are some of the strategies that you can use. And Deb will go into a little bit more depth with some of these about, we'll provide you with some examples and some models that you can use to develop those critical reading skills. The idea of evaluating a text and also identifying the author's intention, and the idea of looking at how a good article is structured and then thinking, okay, well, how can I apply that structure to my own writing? Because really we do learn from models, and reading examples of really good writing and then practicing that writing ourselves is a really good way of developing our own writing capabilities. and that idea of learning to be an efficient rather than a fast reader. And Deb, I'll hand over to you so you can sort of talk us through what we mean by efficient rather than fast.
Okay, Rosalie, and I'll just give you a little next when I need to move slides because I
Okay,
can't drive.
thanks. Yeah, sure.
Okay, next.
Right.
Okay, so we don't need to discuss this, students, but sorry, not students, people, fellow educators and some students. But I want you to think as I go through the following slides about what text types or pre-work activities are used in your discipline, either designed by you or used and applied as a student. And you can post in the chat or share via audio if we have a discussion later. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about text, and I'm going to give you some sort of handy takeaways, hopefully, for some strategies for getting into difficult texts and for making notes and so on to remember what's in the text and how you can apply it to some research or writing that you need to do. So next. So this is an infographic that I designed with another person on our team a while back, but it's been incredibly useful in law, where students have to read large volumes of writing that are quite challenging and difficult. So this is a step-by-step way of getting through a difficult text or getting through a volume of reading. So it's different sorts of levels of reading. So in the preliminary reading, that's when you're looking at the author, the type of publication, the date of the publication, whether it's relevant and reliable to the work you're doing. You decide, yes, this is the one for me. You start reading your abstracts, and I'm going to demonstrate this for you in another slide over the next couple of slides. But when you look at the abstract, that's going to give you a roadmap to an article. So even a really dense article, if you've developed a schema or a kind of framework in your head before you get going into a dense article through reading the abstract, that is going to help you stay focused in your reading. And I'm going to demonstrate this to you in a minute. So that's looking at topic, argument, approach, structure, and conclusions. And I'll show you an example in a moment. So you can do other things in a text if you've been given the choice of deciding or to search for text and find papers that are relevant to something you're writing. So you can do other sort of more surface level skimming through an article to see whether it's relevant or not. And then you start doing your in-depth reading where you start to critically engage with a text, understand it, look at the relationship between ideas, how evidence is used to support positions and so on, and how that aligns with what it is that you are reading the text for and how you can apply it. So as you read, you can annotate by doing the following. So identifying key points, points where you agree or disagree. So just because you're reading a text that's been written by someone who's thoroughly researched it before you've read it, you can still build enough knowledge to position yourself to the content of the text. And actually that's what is really valued in academic writing, particularly in law, if you can maintain a position and argue a point, if you like. So it's worthwhile trying to identify that in the readings that you do before you start writing yourself, and also to note how people introduce arguments and ideas and so on. Okay, so I'm not going to go too far into this one or this part of the infographic, because I really want to focus on unpacking the abstract, but I will be able to send these infographics to Ahmed, who can share them with anybody who's interested. This last panel is about writing, pulling all your knowledge together from the readings you have done, recording the bibliographic information from the type of text you've been reading, who wrote it, the purpose of the text, the audience for the text, and so on. So critically engaging with the text if you like. Whoops. And then including your own voice. So I have a sort of twin document that goes with this Reading at University infographic called Writing at University. So I can send that one to you as well, because that's the next step. Obviously, you're not just doing all this writing for no reason at all. You're actually doing it with a purpose in mind, which is to answer a question. And to get through the readings, to skim and scan, build a schema, and decide which ones are going to support the arguments you want to make. Next.
Up,
Whoop.
help, help.
It is a
Hold
short
on.
segue. We need to go back one.
No, it's gone into edit.
Oh,
Oh. No, no, it's okay. Well, no, it's just X. Back. Sorry.
okay. So we're going to look at an abstract, and remember, students and audience, that the abstract acts as a roadmap to an article, and it can help you understand what the purpose of the paper is and how the authors have come to their conclusions, what their approach, structure, some indication of what the evidence is that the authors have used or the author has used. So it's really important to read the abstract because that's a little taster for the article. So they look quite dense, but they're quite doable if you break them down and you look for these particular points in the abstract, which will help you unlock the article as well, even though it seems very dense on the surface. Okay, next. So I did send you a paper, and I don't expect that many people would have actually read the paper because the paper is quite dense, I must admit. But the abstract is really good, even though it's quite long and detailed. So I don't know how many people actually read the abstract, but I skimmed through it just with those points from the infographic in mind. And I've just broken it down a little bit. It's a very interesting article if anybody wants to go further and find it. I've given you the reference to it, the citation for it. It's about AI and reading and and ESL, EFL, EAL, and critical language awareness. So how do we maintain that without students defaulting to Gen AI to identify things like who's got the power in the text or what the ideology is that's driving the text and so on, things that we need to bring to the text ourselves in order to understand what's going on. So if we go to the next slide, I've color-coded it, and I've used something from the template, from the infographic, to just indicate what the moves are in the abstract and how you can break it down, even if it looks very dense. Dense meaning sort of hard or heavy with ideas. If you just break it down and understand what the authors are trying to do, it will help you get into the text and sort of demystify it. So the very first sentence in a really good abstract is usually the introduction to the topic. So this is looking at the emergence of Gen AI and how there are opportunities and challenges in English as an additional language, writing education. So that is in broad brushstrokes, giving you a very wide view of what the topic is. Then there's a mention of the methods, the approach, what the purpose is, the focus group is. So you can see even in that opening two sentences, it's really dense with information. And if you go through it with an alertness to what the moves are in the text, it will really help you follow what's going on. So the second part of the abstract is a look at an explanation of the mixed methods and why they were used in this qualitative analysis, and a hint about the findings, and then a comment about the findings. Generally speaking, in an academic article, it's not like you're waiting for something to jump out at the end and scare the life out of you. Generally speaking, it's a very guided, stepped walk towards the conclusions with lots of evidence in it. So there's no clown at the end giving you a big fright going, oh my God, I didn't realize that was going to happen. So it's all up front in the abstract, in the introduction, which is a sort of blowout of the abstract and so on. And then the conclusions are hinted at in the abstract. But the article itself is how you get from the introduction and the data and the methods to the conclusions. So that's a little breakdown of an abstract to show you how to get into it and how it can help you understand what's going on in the text, even as dense as the one that I cruelly sent to you. Okay, next slide. Okay, so in summary, the structure of the abstract is similar to the structure of the article. So you get the introduction of the issue, you get the research design, the findings, the interpretation, and the implications. So that's what you're going to be looking for in the article, and that's going to guide you through the article with no big surprise at the end, hopefully. Okay, next slide. Okay, so Rosalie, were you going to be doing this one? Or I don't mind walking people through this, or
I've got it down as me. It's
Okay.
sort of from slides 18 to 20. So yeah. So I guess I can sort of pick up from here if that's okay, Deb.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we know that last week at least some of you participated in a presentation from our colleagues Gemma O'Donoghue and Joseph Yeo on references and citations and how to use referencing or sort of evidence in your writing. And so just thinking about, asking that question also, why do we need to reference in our academic writing, and just sort of thinking about, well, what did you learn from last week's presentation? So just a couple of thoughts. If people want to post something in chat about what they learned from last week's presentation, assuming that you were here, and maybe you might have some questions lingering from last week as well. So feel free to ask those as well. Oops, sorry. So if you want to post in chat, what did you learn from last week's presentation, or do you have any questions from last week's presentation about any aspects of using evidence in your work, using evidence in your writing? So feel free to post in chat.
We're asking you this because in the next part of the presentation as well, after we rethink referencing, we're going to provide you and walk you through some scaffolds for keeping notes that can be very useful, and I'll send those templates off to Ahmed as well. And these are notes that I share with law students, and Rosalie has also shared with students. Anyway, sorry, Rosalie, I jumped in there.
No, that's fine, and thank you for the clarification. Okay, so this is just sort of a quick reminder about how to put together a reference list. Deb, do you want to check in chat to see if there's any?
Oh, yep, everything's good. Nothing much there.
Okay.
We've got some very shy people in the room. Oh,
God knows what happened there. I'm loving this. Okay, so yeah, just a few key points about starting a reference list, and this may be basic for some of you, but I still get astonished as a reviewer of academic articles when I see people put reference lists together who are sort of allegedly experienced academics, and they all seem to be a little bit random themselves about how they put their reference lists together. So clearly they didn't go to any of our workshops. So just so particularly with APA, start the list on a new page and arrange alphabetically, and then follow those rules and use a guide. And Ahmed, I think I sent you the
APA,
UCS.
that's right. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So UTS Library puts together an APA guide that's a real cut down version. It's not sort of 1,000 pages like the actual APA handbook, referencing handbook, but it just summarizes the key things that you need to know when you're doing APA referencing. So do use that. I still need to check it because I can never remember where the full stops and the commas go, and how many authors you have to include in the reference and those sorts of things. So yeah, just have it on your desktop or have it handy nearby. So this is the idea of what does the referencing list look like. That's that idea of the difference between a book, a journal article, and a web page, noticing that there's slight differences in what gets put into italics, where the commas go, where the full stops go, where the capital letters go, etc. It's interesting. Some people get quite worked up about making mistakes in commas and full stops with your reference list. And I feel sorry for those people, but they exist. And if they're marking your assignments, then you need to be mindful of where those commas and full stops go. So just make sure you've got a guide with you, and you can just use the guide to check. And then just the referencing conventions again. What's the order, what's the information that needs to be there, and what's the order that it goes in. So you can see an example there from that the article that was that Deborah used the abstract from Sun and Lun, and that information, the authors, the year, the title of the article, the title of the journal, and then the journal information. Okay, so I can see some information has been posted, things have been posted in chat. So Deb, I think it's now over to you to learn to be a good writer from good reading.
Yeah, well, that's the hope. So coming from the abstract into the article, you have, like I said, a schema, but then you have to be able to make sort of strategic notes as you're doing your reading and remember where material is. So I had a student, Rosalie quoted earlier on, in law. She was from a Russian-speaking background, actually. And she said to me, I want to be a fast reader. And I said, well, you don't really want to be a fast reader. Because to me, a fast reader is somebody who goes so fast that they don't really remember what's going on. But you do want to be an efficient reader. You want to remember what you've read. So I have created some templates for making notes, keeping bibliographic details, in other words, remembering where the information came from. And I'm going to show you some samples in the following slides, and I can send these templates to you later. Next. Okay, I don't think we really need to go into this one again, so we'll just, yeah, we've chapped that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So this is a little template. Because I have worked in law, and I have also worked a lot in arts and social sciences. These are more for a kind of arts and social sciences or a law essay if it's discursive or analytical. So if you have a template, you can pop in the article title, the topic, and think about what is the article title and topic telling me. Try and paraphrase it if you like. When you paraphrase something, it helps you really dig around the language and think about what's going on and try to put it into your words. So when you're trying to identify these parts of the text, you can also paraphrase them. This is where the author is attempting to, and so on. So also you can try and pull out what the language does that the author uses to indicate the structure or the intention of the writing. So in academic writing, it's fairly in a really nicely structured paper. You generally start off with the topic, so you know what the whole thing's about. That gets you sort of oriented towards what the article is driving to do. And then the aim is indicated by, it can be very simple language like this text aims to, explore the 1947 partition of India from the perspective of train drivers. There we go. That was my work, my PhD, so I can talk about that. Okay, and then what the focus is, just as I showed you in the abstract earlier, what's the focus? What is the article actually trying to zero in on? Where's the evidence coming from? What's the thesis statement? So the topic and the thesis statement, as you probably know, are different. So the topic is the big picture. What is it about? But the thesis statement is the position that the writers are going to take, or the writer is going to take, in order to explore the topic, to reveal something in the conclusions. And then, of course, the headings give you the big picture item of how the articles have been organized. So I have a full template with this. It's just a Word doc. It's very simple, but it's a really handy way to keep notes as you go. If you've got a lot of readings to do and you think, oh my goodness, I'm going to forget everything by the time I finish the article. So this helps you keep an eye on what's going on. And then the more readings you do against a template that's asking you to look at these things like topic, aim, focus, evidence, and so on, you do start to take that in, and you do start to look for those things without needing a scaffold, if you like. So you're actually learning how to be an efficient writer, because you're going for the information that you need to decide whether this 30-page, really dense article is actually worth going through. So look at the abstract, look at the introduction, look at the conclusion, and then go through it and see if you can identify these parts of the paper, if it's worth your time for reading. Okay, next. Okay, this is another way to do a structured summary, if you like. So start off obviously with the article title and topic, use a sentence to summarize what the research is about. So you can skim through the abstract, for example, and write, something in your own words about what the research is about, what the major claim or hypothesis proposed in the research is focusing on, what theoretical frameworks or principles are used in the research. This is I think this might be one of yours, Rosalie. So this is perhaps from engineering. So this isn't the same as the sort of template I would use for law, but it could be for other disciplines. I mean, there's aspects of it that you can apply everywhere. So what contributions or gaps does the research aim to make or fill? And sometimes, it's a contribution rather than filling a gap. Everybody gets very nervous about or neurotic about trying to fill a gap, when basically a lot of research is just reconstellating research and adding a new layer to it, in a sense. So what methodology is used in the research? What tools or models are used? How's the data analyzed? And how does this research relate to your project or area of study if you're doing a larger piece of work? Okay, next. Okay, and this is a reading concept matrix. I have a larger version of this that I can also send, but the concept matrix is similar to the first sample I showed you, but it's a different way of sort of, the geography is a little bit different. So it might be clearer to do it this way. Everyone finds their own way. So, what's the main point? Where are the main key concepts? Use quotation marks, page numbers if you cite word for word, and so on. So law students have to use a lot of evidence, and they get very worried about being able to track the evidence. So this was really designed with law students in mind, but it's equally applicable to many disciplines. And then, of course, you've got to think, well, how am I going to use this in my task? So if I've got an essay question or I have an assessment task to do, how will I be able to use this? So this will support a claim I can make about X, Y, and Z. So that's what I call a reading concept matrix. Next one. Okay, now somebody, I think Ahmed, you mentioned this right at the beginning about keeping a track of vocabulary and remembering new words and all the rest of it, where you found them, what they mean, without reaching for a dictionary. So I've never been somebody who can guess the meaning of a word from its context. I generally have to reach for a dictionary, online or otherwise. But it's a really good idea to keep a subject glossary if you're having trouble remembering the definitions for various words. So you can record the word. This obviously is from law again, so you can got determinate, negligence, causation, and so on, because in law and in many disciplines, ordinary language is put to different uses. So a definition within the discipline that you're working in and perhaps a synonym for it, and then a sentence using the word in the context of the discipline you're working in. I've got legal context there because this was for law. And I asked the students each week when I met them to add to the subject glossary list, and it was a very useful exercise. There's lots of tools online for doing this, but otherwise it's just very easy to make a Word doc and share it. You can also put the word in from the original sentence it was in, so you can do that, so you can see what its meaning is in context, and then rewrite it. It really helps some students to do this. So this other glossary was from more of a social science paper. So the word was diaspora. What kind of a word is it? It's a noun, but it also has an adjectival form. What does it mean? What's its definition and how can I use it? Well, where did it first appear? And then how can I use it in a sentence? So that's a way of keeping a glossary as you go. Okay, I think this might be back to you, Rosalie.
Yeah, and this is just
Sorry.
no, that's fine. This is bringing it all together, bringing it home. So as we know, reading takes time. It's not instant, and readings are difficult, and they become more difficult the more you study. It doesn't get easier, but you do develop good reading techniques and reading strategies, so that you have ways of managing both your understanding and the volume of the reading that you need to do. And one piece of advice from us is to be realistic about which readings you can complete before a class or before an assignment or is due, and so don't think that you can do them the night before, because that generally doesn't work, unless you sort of can read all night. But to sort of think about, okay, so what are the readings that you need to do, which are the most important ones, and then that's when you bring in your evaluative judgment, and that's when you start bringing in those critical reading skills and looking at the readings and saying, okay, well, which ones are the key ones? Maybe look at the assignment and say, okay, so these seem to be the key readings that I need to do, and then these other readings are sort of for more depth or more detail or exploration of other ideas. So you know where you're going. So sort of being strategic and being organized, and also as you're reading, it is really important to have some kind of a purpose. You don't just pick up anything and start reading. You're always reading for a purpose, and make that purpose explicit for yourself. So think about, okay, as I'm reading this, what questions do I have, or what questions do I hope this article, this textbook, this journal article will help me to answer. You might want to come up with that glossary list. I find glossaries incredibly important, particularly if you're going into a new field of study, because that level of technical vocabulary or subject specific vocabulary can prevent you from understanding. So you need to have ways in, and having a glossary that helps you to see, okay, those are the key terms that I need to be able to understand. I need to be able to understand what they mean, and I need to use them in my own writing. So building a glossary list is really useful, and it's actually really nice maybe to share with your fellow students if you're doing the same subject or the same assignments or the same topics, so you can sort of pool your knowledge, and it makes it a little bit more fun as well. Have a reading template that you can fill in and bring to the tutorial, one of the ones that we've shown you. Or you might want to come up with your own template of sort of mapping the information from the reading. I know people, if they've got a lot of readings and they're good with spreadsheets, can use a spreadsheet to sort of track the readings that they've done and sort of say, okay, well, these are the key points, and this is what this author's saying, and this contradicts what this author was saying, so you can have a whole lot of cross-referencing going on. So that's another approach. It's often handy to write a short summary of a particular article, especially if it's an important one. So you can have that, and it really helps you retain that information. You might also find another modality that expresses the idea, particularly if it's a really complex idea, and it's a key, what we might call a threshold concept, or a key concept that you need to be able to understand in your discipline, and sort of find a media story or a YouTube clip or a TED talk or a TikTok a video or something like that, that expresses the idea. You never know. In a different way, and again, helping you to bridge those understanding gaps. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that that's that from us in terms of our presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing, and we can go to some questions or discussions or things.
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Rosalie and Deborah. Any questions, comments, suggestions, guys? Please feel free to unmute or send your questions in the chat. And
yes, Dr. Ahmad, can I ask a question?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Yes. First of all, thank you for your session. The second thing is, to what extent do instructors, students, or teachers permit learners to tackle with the reading and writing challenges, specifically in Gaza? How can we deal? What are strategies, reasonable strategies, suitable strategies for those students who live in tents, in enclaves, and etc. like this? Why? Because the circumstances are very bad, and the environment is not appropriate for studying or for reading and writing. Why? Because I'm teaching reading right now and writing. Really, my students sent to me many complaints about that. They cannot come across, they cannot understand the text, even the text is simple. Please, may you give us some advice about that to help the students? Thank you.
Rosalie,
well, we can't talk about the Gaza context, but we can talk about just approaches to reading. And Deb, do you want to take over?
Well, I was going to say, if we send you some of these templates, they can at least help students if they're not in a classroom together, if they're isolated, if they can access perhaps some of the material on their phones or online. I will share the templates that I have. So these are not a quick fix, but they are a way of showing students how to read text without you having to teach them directly how to do it all the time, if you like. So they're fairly simple. I can share those with you, so at least students have some strategies for reading and writing text. But as Rosalie said, we can't. The bigger issues that you're raising there about trying to learn in the situation in Gaza where you are is something that's really beyond what we could really advise you on at the moment, except to offer you some of these simple tools that you can share with your students so that if they can access readings, they can use them and at least make sense of the material, if that helps.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Yahya. Thank you, Deborah. Thanks, Rosalie. I've got a question from Martin about how must students manage their pre-lecture readings. And honestly, because we tend to adopt this flipped classroom approach. Personally, I adopt this flipped classroom approach where I ask my students to do the pre-class readings in advance. And then in the group, we go through the material either in recorded videos or in voice notes, or if we meet on Zoom, we discuss the concepts that are tricky for them. Why we go for flipped classroom, and this maybe is related to Dr. Yahya's point that it is tricky to manage connectivity, to manage students' time and make sure that students can gather in the same time for a class. So we find flipping the classroom in such a way where you send the material to the student in advance in a very small sections, and they can, at their own pace, they can read the material, take notes, use all these strategies that Deborah and Rosalie talked about, in the way they like, in the way that is comfortable for them, given their unique circumstances, the challenges they are going through. They can work offline. So they go through the material, and then I give them some time, like say a week, and I start sending them kind of recordings of the material, maybe short YouTube videos, or voice notes, voice messages on WhatsApp, as I said. Or the other day we had, for example, a Zoom call like this, and where we went through the material together and addressed any questions or concerns. So that's how it goes, like flipping the classroom, going to those higher cognitive skills after they read, like going a step higher than just engaging with the text and going deeper in more of discussion or live session. I hope that answers your question, Martin. Exactly, yeah. It feels it maximizes quality teaching time, even like in face-to-face teaching, let alone online teaching or virtual teaching, that we haven't met our students for more than 2 years now. So you can imagine the tricky situation. But I was going to say something about those, let's say, skills that Deborah and Rosalie talked about. And some of these skills, when it comes to referencing and those like specific details of referencing, the italics, the page number, the issue, the volume. And sometimes students might ask, and I had this type of discussion with some of my students. Is it really important to care about those specific details of referencing? And I always said, yes, because first of all, you are a researcher. You are going to be an academic. And it's important that you know what you are doing. And we always talk about academic integrity. This is part of academic integrity, that you are aware of what you are doing, what you are citing, and why you are citing it in the form that is correct, in the form that is consistent throughout your work. And whenever we talk about AI, this brings that, okay, AI can do the job for me. And when I think Mumtaza said, I used AI to do the job for me. Well, it fixes the problem for that particular moment, Mumtaza, but will you learn the skill? Will you learn the mechanical skill? Even if it's mechanical, you need to learn it. And whenever we talk about AI, this brings a question that, I mean, does that mean that we should not use AI? No, I mean, Rosalie said it needs to be supplementary. It shouldn't replace you as a student, as a researcher, as an academic. Because at the end of the day, what is the importance of this work if it doesn't give you that deep understanding of the topic or the subject matter? It's not about just submitting the assignment and getting a grade for the assignment. It's more about being able to defend your assignment, your writing, to understand it, to engage in a discussion about it. So I hope that that is clear to our students. Sorry. Any questions, guys?
No, that was really illuminating for us to hear as well, Ahmed, that what your students are up against in terms of the conditions they're in, trying to do their learning, but also, you know, getting back to why reference. I mean, part of that is to acknowledge the work of others, you know, to make sure that it's correct, so that if you want to go and find it, you've got the correct address for where to find the article, even though they look complicated on the surface. After a while, you get used to it. And, you know, being precise about where the article comes from helps you find it. So that's one of the reasons, you know, why you have to have that very detailed information on it. And also just to acknowledge the work that's gone into producing an academic article. I think a few of us can acknowledge that it is quite arduous to do. But it sounds like some of the templates, like particularly the reading and the writing infographics, might be useful tools for you, Ahmed, to share with your students so that when they do their pre-readings, they can make notes and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel those templates are really useful, particularly for our students. And as you said, Deborah, it's so that this is clear to our students that you can work smarter, not harder. You don't have. I mean, it doesn't mean that you need to work harder. You could work smarter, but follow the ways that would first improve your understanding of the subject matter and also improve your critical thinking skills. This is important. Sujud was asking, do we have to do it manually when it comes to citation? Well, you don't have to do it manually, Sujud. I mean, if you use EndNote or if you use Zotero, these are software. So these are software that these are there for you to use, but we are talking about the knowledge of why these are done in that way and not the other, knowing the details of citation. You don't have to do it manually. But at least, for example, whenever you submit an article as an academic, and I'm sure Deborah, Martin, Rosalie, and some of you, and Dr. Yahya as well, will relate to this. Whenever you submit a journal article, it will come back to you that please fix the references or ensure that page range is correct. So these are important details. And as I said, part of academic integrity. So if you want to add something here, Martin, Rosalie, Deborah, please feel free.
I was just commenting on Sujud about if you can get software to do it for you, excellent. It's just, but you do need to know what it's supposed to look like, and so you can actually check to make sure that the software that you're using has actually got the right conventions, because there are some variations, I think, particularly with Chicago. So you do need to make sure that it's following the examples. Yeah.
That's interesting, Mumtaz. I think, yeah, that's the point you talked about, Rosalie and Deborah, when it comes to AI, whether it is that shallow nature of AI generated content and the deep understanding and deep engagement that you are expected to do as a student with the text, with the academic text.
Yeah. And you have to understand that what AI is trained to do is present information, all information equally. You know, so it's like I said, and we've said before, it cannot distinguish truth from falsehood. So everything according to it is true. And you know, then we've all got examples of where it's just been blatantly wrong, and identified the wrong person or the wrong reference or the wrong idea or the wrong year or the wrong fact, all of those sorts of things. So Martin's asking what the question is with the access to databases, Ahmed.
I think yeah, I mean, even academics here, Martin, struggling with access to resources, because what happened was that universities lost access to libraries for 2 years now. I mean, infrastructure has collapsed. Subscriptions have expired, and universities have been unable to, I mean, to renew access to libraries, etc. I mean, given the logistics, given the financial consequences of accessing libraries worldwide, but there are some really wonderful and generous initiatives out there, including the University of Oxford, some other universities around the world that offered access to students and academics from Gaza, like for 6 months, a year, etc., and some fellowships that provided access to articles. I know it is not a big deal, but I mean, for universities, this costs a lot of money, and they are like cautious when it comes to giving access to individuals that are not their students or academics or staff. But as I said, yeah, through these initiatives, we've been able to access resources like libraries, digital resources. I've been working on an initiative that hopefully will be able to secure access to journal articles to students from a university in the UK. So I'm in the process of finalizing, hopefully, that kind of agreement with the university that would allow our students to gain access to, and academics as well, to journal articles, let's say for a year, and see how it goes. So fingers crossed. I remember there was an initiative at the University of Oxford where it's the University of Oxford Libraries, where you log in as an external visitor in the library website, and then you request a scan, a PDF scan of the article or the chapter or whatever. And then there is a dedicated team that works specifically for the students from Gaza, and academics as well from Gaza, and they would scan the article or the reference and send it by email within 2 or 3 days, which is great. Yeah, I mean, that's really great. So that's why I've been working on this initiative. Hopefully it will provide some comfort and stability for scholars and students in Gaza. Any other comments or questions, guys? I honestly really like that structured summaries of readings, Deborah, that you referred to when it comes to it's a nice framework, probably, that you can use when you approach a journal article, like starting with the article, the topic, the sentence that summarizes what the research is about. I found it really useful, and I think Martin agrees that it's a framework that you can follow as a student or as a scholar to engage with a journal article or academic text in general. So thank you. That was really nice.
Yeah, I used to teach, actually I still do sometimes, teach HDR students sort of those beginning literature ways of approaching literature, particularly if they're moving into a new area, because a lot of the engineering students, when they come into postgrad, will be coming across engineering management, and management, of course, is a very different neck of the woods from technical engineering. And so the engineering students actually have to learn pretty much a new language, and also actually how a business or a management journal article is structured, which tends to be a little bit different from a technical engineering article, and not nearly as many pages of diagrams and stats, and a lot more words, and it's the words that tend to get in the way for a lot of engineering students. So it is useful to have that framework and think, this is what's going on, and this is how you deconstruct it, put it together, put its summary together, and you can do that quite quickly with a lot of articles.
That's right, absolutely. Yes, Samah, I agree, Samah. I'm working on hopefully securing some access, so hopefully you will benefit from that initiative soon, inshallah. Any other comments or questions, guys? Please feel free. Because I know it's 10:20 in Sydney, so please, guys, I'm just aware. I'm aware of the time difference, so we really appreciate your time.
No, that's fine. If anybody has
Rosalie,
anything,
and Martin, I know Martin is What time is it there in West Australia, Martin?
Oh, we're much earlier than Rosalie and Deborah. It's 3 hours earlier, so
Okay,
it's only actually
7:20
p.m. here, yeah. Rosalie, can I ask you, what's that lovely background that you have there? It's very dramatic, but it's Australian, I think, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, it's the Blue Mountains. That's where I live.
Oh, wow.
I don't live, but I mean, and that's it's a view from one of the walks in the Blue Mountains, and looking over to the south. So yes, it's on a good day. Yeah.
Martin, you've got a question asking about if there is any difference between reading strategies in Arabic and English. If you're talking about academic texts, I suppose that there's a huge similarity in how texts are structured in terms of an abstract, and then introduction, then probably lit review. I mean, academically speaking, they are exactly, hopefully, I mean, almost the same structure. And I think there is some kind of overlap between Arabic and English in that regard. I don't know which influenced which, but I suppose it's some very similar structure. Non-academic texts, of course, there are differences in the structures, therefore differences in the strategies, how you approach the text. Arabic tends to be really repetitive, as I said last week. Yeah, and in our culture, the more you repeat your ideas in the text, the better the text will be, the stronger it would be. And of course, this is contrary to English. The more you repeat, the more awkward it sounds. So
it
we
sounds
highlight.
like you're running.
Yeah, and we have to highlight this in writing classes. We have to highlight this to our students, and in reading classes, that look, you're dealing with English texts. Don't expect too much repetition. When you are writing English text, don't produce too much repetition, because this is different from your background, from your first language, from Arabic. So yeah, there are differences in the strategies when it comes to non-academic texts. And unfortunately, sometimes I read academic articles in Arabic, and the influence of the culture, the oral culture, Arabic, is there in their academic writing. That repetition is there, and sometimes it sounds redundant. And yeah, I mean, it's the role of the supervisor or to guide that. Yeah, it has been mentioned. You don't have to mention again. Just get it out. That's right. Any other questions, guys? All right, so if you don't have any other questions, I'll be sending you the templates once I receive them from Deborah, and I'll be sending you the guide, the AP guide in the group, and also I'll be sharing the recording of this wonderful session. Thank you so much, Deborah, for your time. Thank you so much, Rosalie. Thank you, Martin. We really appreciate your time, and we always look forward to having you once again, hopefully in the new year, if you have time.
Yeah.
And happy holidays coming soon, and wishing you a happy new year. Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah. Thank you, and thank you so much for having us. It's been lovely to be here and to share some of our sort of experiences of working with academic texts, and just knowing that it's difficult. So yeah, there are ways in, but it's still there's a lot of grunt work that has to be done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Rosalie.
Yeah. Thank you. Lovely to meet you all. And I'm going to slide off into the night now.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.
See you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Bye,
Bye, everyone. It was
Bye.
really
Bye.
lovely to meet you all. And
Thank
I'll
you,
send
Deborah.
the material.
Sure. Thank you, Deborah. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Okie doke. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.